So I could give you plenty of reasons why you just generally shouldn't go to university, but let's say that your mind is absolutely set on it. Let's say that you want to do medicine, you want to do law, you want to do software engineering, you want to do any of those things that you typically need to go to university for. Now, obviously, with something like software engineering, you don't necessarily need to go to university. There are plenty of other routes you can take. You can take the code bootcamp route and build up stuff like that. You can go learn stuff by yourself and build a portfolio like that and then just go and get a job. You don't have to go to university for it, but let's say that you absolutely want to and you are, you desire to go to university right now. My suggestion is, if you're thinking of going to university, you haven't signed up yet. I don't know when the sign up for like the next year in America starts, but in Australia, at least in my state, sign-ups are like right now. I think they close in like 2 weeks or something like that. So if you're thinking of going for the next semester, I would say don't. Do not go to the next semester of classes because I don't expect them to be better by then. Because what you're going to have happen is you're going to basically end up wasting your money, because what you're going to be paying for is basically really, really poorly managed Zoom calls and online classes. Now, if you know anything about me, you'd probably be saying, well, Brodie, don't you do all your classes online anyway? Don't you just sign up as an internal student and then just not go to classes? That is where you'd be completely correct. Now, you would think that that means that, it would probably be better for me that classes are online. The issue here is that the benefit I get from classes, being in person and I'm online, is that the people running the classes actually know how to use the software that they're trying to use. So when someone does, a lecture in a lecture hall, they know, okay, this is how I get the lecture recorded, this is how I make the audio usable, this is how I just make a decent lecture. Now, if you take that person who's been doing that for years and then suddenly just stick them in front of new software that they've never worked with before, in an environment they've never worked with before, what you're going to have happen is obviously it's going to be a complete train wreck. So, for example, I had a lecture at 9 o'clock this morning. That was a 2-hour lecture. It was for my VR class. Doesn't really matter what class is. So, the problem we had is that the lecturers running this class have been doing it for at least 6 months. So most of my classes have been at least partially online or completely online since first semester, which started February, March-ish or so. I don't remember the exact date. Doesn't matter the exact date. So they've been doing it for at least 6-7 months. But they still have no idea how to actually use Zoom. So I was like, at the start of the lecturer was like, I don't know how to, have the chat window open and also have the screen sharing open, because he didn't realize that in Zoom there was a way to pop out the chat window. This is a very basic feature. You just click on the chat bubble and it pops out the thing. I don't know how you managed to miss it. It's a very, very basic feature. And he's been using this software for at least 6 months now and didn't realize that this feature exists. Now, that's a tiny thing, and the reason why they were doing that is basically so that people don't, just find the link and then just join from anywhere. So luckily they've managed to deal with that problem where people would just post the link on some forum and then, the class would get just filled with random people who are just trolling from some website. Now they're using waiting rooms, so they are slightly better than they used to be, but they're still not great. The other thing is that about an hour into the podcast, he realized, hey, I'm not actually recording. Now, I don't know how you managed to miss that in Zoom, because Zoom gives you like a big red icon that says recording when you're actually doing it. And somehow he managed to miss that. Once again, it's another thing that is very, very difficult to actually miss. It's a very basic feature of the application. And after using it for 6 months, you should probably be used to it. Now, I can't expect these lecturers to be perfect with it because they are used to working with the other stuff, and obviously it might take them a long time to actually learn something. So I couldn't expect them to be actually perfect with it, but what I can say is that you are better off waiting until they get better with it. As I said before, they've now worked out how to do waiting rooms, so it's less bad than it used to be. And maybe in another 6 months, it will be less bad than it is now. And maybe in a year from now, it will be even less bad than then. Or maybe we'll even go back to doing classes in person. And that would honestly be the best thing for this, because the other problem I have is that half of my classes are online and half of them are offline. Now, this isn't really that big of a deal, except for the fact that the offline classes make no sense either. So because everyone has to be separated by, you know, 1.5 meters, 2 meters, whatever it is in your country, it's 1.5 meters here. Basically, when you have things like, you know, group discussions, most of the time, the classes I have that are in person are workshops. And workshops typically consist of a lecture portion and then some sort of like group discussion with the members of the workshop itself. So when you have people sitting 1.5 meters away from each other, that's not really that conducive to a good conversation. Obviously, it can work, but you're still kind of trying to force it to work, and it's not really going to be that great. But with this class, there's no reason why it actually has to be in person besides this group discussion. But you can do the group discussion very easily online. There's no reason why that has to be in person. So for a class like this, it probably should be online, and I would have expected it is. But you also have this bit of confusion then, because now I have some classes which are structured in the exact same way as this class, which are online, but this class is offline because it's a workshop, and workshops can technically be offline. And this is where there's just some other weird confusion as well. I don't understand how they managed to distinguish between these two class types. They should both be online or they should both be offline. So one of the other big reasons why someone goes to university is for the community aspect. Now, this might be because you want to have a group of friends you want to study with, you want to have a group of people who you know are going through the same struggles that you're going with, or maybe you're just someone who likes to go out to parties all the time. Now, if you're in your, say, 2nd, 3rd, 4th year, you probably already have the group of friends who you know that, you know, are all just gonna be going through the same stuff you're going through. But if you're a first year, you don't have those connections yet. The connections you generally will develop in university typically happen in your first year, and they don't happen anywhere near as easily if everyone's doing stuff online. So what I mean here is, when I had my workshop at 9 AM on Wednesday, the one that I actually have to go to class for, the car park was basically empty. Now at 9 AM, that's pretty normal. I don't expect the car park to be that full at 9. Most classes start at like 10 or 11. Now, the problem I had is that when I left at 11, the car park was still half empty, which is not a thing that happens on my campus. Typically, the car park is going to be completely full after maybe 10:30. So the fact that the car park was pretty much empty indicates how few people were actually on campus. Because most people are going to have, you know, their practicals. And for a software engineering degree, a practical is pretty much just, hey, here's a PDF document with some stuff you have to do online or do on your computer. Do it on your computer. Most of the time, unless you need like Mac OS or something, most people are going to be able to just do that on whatever device they have. As for the lectures are all going to be completely online. As I was saying before, they're managed terribly, but they're all completely online. So the first years who are coming in, they're going to have much less opportunities to actually meet new people. And the problem here is that after your first year, typically it's going to be much harder to actually meet people, because first year is when you have the highest attendance rates and just the highest number of people in the degree, because after first semester, typically it is, you'll have a bunch of people dropping out. And some of those people drop out because they don't end up building those friends groups. So I'm kind of worried for how many people will actually be left in the degree after, like, you know, next semester, next year, the ones who are starting in the coming semester. Because if they're doing all of their classes online and they're not going to campus for their actual classes, they're not going to be able to make those same sort of connections. Now, as I've said, I do most of my stuff online. I did meet a lot of people in those first couple of weeks who I'm still really good friends with now, but I don't really have the same, I guess, desperate need to have people who I know are all studying the same things, who are all, you know, trying to go through the same stuff that I'm going through. But I know a lot of people who absolutely would have dropped out if they didn't have people supporting them in their second semester, in their first semester, or even following years on after that. So if you do want to build up a community while you're at university, right now it's really not going to happen, because after those first couple of weeks, it's going to be so much harder to actually meet new people. Obviously, there will be chances to meet people because you're still going to have classes in following years, but most of the people that I've met were in those first couple of weeks, and the ones that I didn't meet then, the very, very few that I met after that point have been in the rare occasions where I go to a class and feel like talking to a new person. Because once people have their little friend groups, most people don't, try to reach out of those groups, at least in a software engineering sort of degree. Because most people are sort of nerdy, most people are sort of happy in their enclosed little bubble, and once they have their little bubble to themselves, they're not really going to try to bring anyone else into it. At least that's the experience I've had. That's the experience I've had with most people. Some people are a bit more outgoing. You'd be surprised if you haven't ever done a software engineering degree, how outgoing some people are. And actually, even so, like, how smart some of those people are. You'd think that maybe some of those people would be just there to do the partying, but I've met some really outgoing people who are just as hard work, or just as much of a hard worker as anyone else. So most people aren't like that, but there will be a few exceptions. Those few exceptions are the ones that I typically end up meeting after the first year. But anyway, I'm kind of rambling about what I'm saying at this point. The point is that if you're thinking of going to university, I would say to avoid doing so right now, because it's going to be a much worse experience than basically anyone else has had. So yeah, that's pretty much all I want to say. If I say any more, I'm going to keep repeating what I'm trying to say. So I think that's pretty much everything for me. I'll cut back to when I'm at home to read out my supporters. So I'd like to give a special thank you to my supporters: Joachim, Corbinian, Craig, Nathan, Andrew, Montazar, Joseph, Peter D, Road, Tony, Donald, John, Mikkel, Spagin, Thais, and Zilza. If you want to go support my work, there'll be some links down below to my Subscribestar, my Patreon, all of that stuff, as well as my podcast, which is available on the Tech Over Tea YouTube channel, and also the library channel. The audio version for that is available anywhere you listen to audio podcasts. Also remember to go check out this channel, available on Library, BitTube, and BitChute as well. And remember to go smash the like button and leave me a comment down below. And remember to subscribe and ding the little bell icon down below as well. So I think that is pretty much everything for me, and I'm out.